Hi, for today's edition of Simply Stated, we will be talking, and I'll be talking very quietly because I'm indoors today, about the past Super Bowl game over the weekend and what that actually means. And in three parts. One, what I would have actually been doing that day had I not ended up watching it on Sunday. Two, what the game appeared to be. Three, what the game actually was. And then we'll talk about the conclusion, which is whatever you want to do with the rest of this. For me, if I had had the money and resources and hadn't been so injured, I would have been out skiing. And I had a number of friends who were actually men that really delightful men that were in total delineation against, the experiences I had with Frederick. Um, Cersei's a woman, but, not a respectful person. Wilhelm, um, Buffalo Bill, Patricia, Kara, like completely opposite experience. People with money and resources who were decent. And both of them, I mean, there were a number of them were out that day actually skiing and put up pictures. In fact, one friend was really great. He posted video of himself skiing, and so it looked like you were actually the one skiing. So I have to thank him for that. And this episode actually is really cool. They did that. Thank you. And if I hadn't been skiing, I would have been out working. As most people know, I actually had my chances to go to medical school ruined by the Russian Mafia, Buffalo Bill, Kendrick, Cersei, Wilhelm, Patricia, Karen, Fredward, the guy they nicknamed Dan. They all ruined that for me. And then I tried to go to nursing school, and that was ruined as well. So I think I also would have potentially spent the day working, hopefully in a hospital and actually taking care of people. Like, I think that was really cool. And I'm able to work at home health anymore because of the back injuries due to these people and their stupid network down the DC area. It is the Russian Mafia, just for understanding that this is actually related to events with what was once called the KGB and now is modernly called the F.S.B. And so let's talk about the game itself. And yes, it's maybe one of the quietest episodes I ever filmed. Um, the game itself appeared to be the San Francisco 49ers getting beaten in overtime despite playing a fairly good game by the Kansas City Chiefs, right? Grand victory, supposedly Taylor Swift, all these people showed up. And by the way, all the celebrities that attended the game, not the ones that performed, but attended, the ones that stands that look like nasty, trifling Russian trash, those are all Buffalo Bills people. They're all people who have a material stolen from me, from me and from other people who literally had their lives ruined and beat up over it. So these people could have free material because apparently the most important thing is for them to be able to go up on stage and sing to little record back mics and perform other people's material and sing in stolen voices. And the whole thing is just digital mechanized ridiculousness. It's meant to entertain people who are essentially Russian oligarchs and or part of the Russian mafia, the FSB itself. So the reality of the game is instead what you really see is that the 49ers strategy was eventually figured out enough, and the NFL unfortunately chose to betray them, put the game into overtime. As a friend of mine noted, who was actually a Buffalo Bills fan, the actual team, not the guy. She with her family, and she was putting updates on Facebook. She said this game is going into way too much overtime. And it was really obvious that the NFL has decided to sell out their teams and it was going to let the 49ers lose to the Kansas City Chiefs. And the 49ers knew that was going to happen. They could see it. So they began playing a completely different game. And the game is called F It Up. So what they were doing is, you saw moves of one of the guys, they had problems with some of the players on the Chiefs being a little too aggressive. So he ran really, really hard, like down the field as hard as he could at one of the guards, pulled it out of the way at the last minute. The guy for the Chiefs literally hit it and was stuck on it. Probably a career-ending injury. Probably will not be able to play next year or again, and certainly not the level he once did. And that was what the game degenerated into. It was incident after incident with 49ers knowing that they were going to be set up to lose, that they were losing because the NFL was not going to support them as a legitimate team, and pulling strategic move after move, just like the Buffalo Bills did and the Baltimore Ravens also did. These are strategic choices the players in the NFL have decided to make, knowing what was happening with the Kansas City Chiefs, which is owned by Buffalo Bill. He's a Russian gangster and a serial killer who has not been brought to justice in the U.S. The entire game was rigged. Unfortunately, what this all means as well, like the Detroit Lions, really sweet group of guys, good team. They didn't want to have anything to do with that. They didn't want to play that kind of a game, knowing that that's what they would end up doing. Also, you're going to see a lot more players were pulling themselves out. There were guys the Chiefs who knew it was about to happen that were planning to look for a way out of the Chiefs somewhere else in the NFL or maybe out of the NFL that literally found ways to pull themselves out of the game because they knew what was going to happen to them if they stayed in, that they were going to get beaten, literally, for being a part of it. And I think if you are part of the NFL, now that I've told you this, if you didn't already know this, you have to decide for yourself if it's really worth it to get beat up or potentially injured for the rest of your life trying to take care of Travis Kelce, who has a serious rage problem as part of the Russian Mafia, or Patrick Mahomes, because that's what you're really dealing with. It's really up to you in the end. I'm passing the information along for anyone else who's confused, because I have a number of friends who are very well educated that decide not to watch the games anymore after deflating. As for me, I would not even bother to watch the show if it hadn't been the fact that somebody actually paid for me to have a subscription to it. I literally would have actually been spending the day doing anything else. I spent some time baking that day. I made cookies for cops. I had a wonderful walk outside. I enjoyed the pictures my friends posted. And I know that everyone I know is actually completely sick of the paid media coverage of Taylor Swift. There's nothing more ridiculous at this point than the footage that Buffalo Bill and his team have been putting out to try and correct her image as being anything than what she is, which is a former psych patient that he pulled up out of Janesville, Wisconsin. By the way, let's note something. It's extremely disturbing to realize that everything that people said about my former classmate, not her, but there was a man in my class that made it really big in the NFL entertainment, and it's really obvious for all of us now that he's the one that's been undermining everything. He has advanced degrees in economics, and he just lied to all of us. He's obviously old KGB. There were rumors his parents were, and he's obviously still part of the F.S.B. and just decided to completely undermine the U.S. NFL in favor of Russian mafia and crime. Noting also that a woman in my class was brutally murdered in what people thought was a freak car accident. Her actual name was Crystal Egge. The murder was eventually solved to be tied back to Cersei Wilhelm and the fact that her own mother, quote unquote mother, turned out not to really be her mother, sold her out to be killed. She was a fantastic U.S. champion dancer. She led the Palm Squad at Parker High School to victory during the years that I was in school there. A number of people on the team who performed with her went on to serve in the U.S. military, U.S. Air Force, and I think it's really important that her legacy is never forgotten. And I almost want to tear up saying this because the reality is that last week the Russian military invaded Alaska and they invaded part of the U.S. and they tried to take over the U.S. airspace there, and the U.S. Air Force actually defeated them. So before you say that, this thing with the NFL, that the Kansas City Chiefs, which is obviously an openly communist team with their colors, displays, and people who actually support them, is winning, remember that the U.S. military had a huge victory last week in defeating Russia once again from trying to invade the U.S. before an important game where a bunch of their bratty, spoiled Russian mafia were actually planning to attend to throw a party for themselves. It is a Pyrrhic victory. And this thing with the entertainment industry and the Russian mafia beating people up and trafficking them and stealing and the crimes that have gone on with it, it's not going to go the way they want. This supposed Super Bowl win or whatever it was supposed to have meant, even my time spent watching it, it's just not going to work out for them. And that's the reality. And this has been a special edition of Simply Stated. Thank you.